I've got a new release and I can't wait to share it with you. If you're curious to find out which new pattern has entered the chat, then please keep on watching. Hey Stitchers, your girl Kris here. Welcome or welcome back to my channel on social where it's totally cool to obsess with sewing. You guys, please forgive me if I sound like there's a frog in my throat. I have been down with the flu and your girl has really been trying to battle it off. Unfortunately, I did end up losing the battle and so my throat is still a little bit scratchy, but I'm hoping it won't interfere too much with today's video. Now you guys, let's talk about a new pattern release. Love Notions has just released their new Pianoforte Jumper pattern. In case you didn't know, I am a Love Notions ambassador, and that means I have a special code for you today. If you use my affiliate code BLK45, then you can save yourself 10% off the release pricing. How cool is that? Now, if this jumper is intriguing to you, I will definitely encourage you to go ahead and pick it up. It does come in the Love Notion sizing, which is an extra small up to a 5XL, and it has two bust cup options. The standard bust for those of us who have a 2-inch difference between high bust and full bust, and then a full bust option which contemplates a 4-inch difference between the high bust and the full bust. Now, no matter what season you are entering into, I think that the Pianoforte is going to be a great addition to your wardrobe. If you're moving into spring or you're moving into winter, then you just need to choose a fabric choice to reflect your temperatures. Now, I live in the Caribbean. It is hot as hell here all year round, and I decided to make up my Pianoforte using a heavyweight denim fabric. And this is what she looks like. I mean, how cute is she? Did you guys check out this pocket situation right here? I love myself some big beefy pockets, perfect for putting in my cell phone or a snack, and these ones definitely fit the bill. So again, if you want to go ahead and check out this pattern, then be sure to run on over to the Love Notion site and use my code BLK45 and save yourself just a couple extra pennies on this pattern. Now, I thought it would be really cool to do a sew along for this pattern, and so if you need help constructing your Pianoforte, then absolutely keep watching this video. Now, the neckline and the arm side of this jumper pattern are finished with all-in-one facings, and the tutorial sets out for you how to go about doing the burrito method. But I thought that it would be interesting to share with you an alternative to the burrito method to go ahead and finish off your neckline and your arm side. So if you are curious and intrigued to know how I ended up putting my Pianoforte together without using the burrito method, then I think that the sew along is going to be perfect for you. I should mention that most of the sew along was filmed during the evening hours, and here in the Caribbean we have the distinct pleasure of animals making a whole bunch of noise in the evenings. There is absolutely nothing I can do about God's work. I have gone ahead and tried to reduce the background noise, but I know a lot of people have pointed it out in previous videos, wondering what those sounds were, and so I just thought it was best for me to point it out up front. I really do hope though that those noises are not too much of a distraction from today's video. So without further ado, let's get stitching. Now, I am going to do the plain front version of the Pianoforte, and for this version, you're going to need the following pieces. You're going to need your side main piece, as well as your side bottom piece. You will need your plain front middle piece. You will need your back piece, your back facing piece, your front facing piece, and your pocket piece. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut out my pattern pieces using denim fabric for my main pieces, and then I'm going to find probably some quilting cotton that I have in my stash to use for my pocket pieces and as well for my facing pieces. Remember, I am doing the plain front version of the Pianoforte. If you're doing the zippered version, then your front pieces are going to be a little bit different. So pay attention to your pattern pieces depending on the view that you choose to sew up. Now, I have cut out a size large in the standard bust because that is my typical Love Notion sizing. Remember, when you're choosing your sizing, to consult the sizing charts as well as the finished garment measurements, and those will both help you determine which size you want to start with. So now that I have my pattern pieces all cut out, I can go ahead and cut out my fabric, and then we can get started with our sew along. So all of my pattern pieces have been cut out, and there are two things that I wanted to point out to you. The first thing is that for your facing pieces, the pattern tells you to cut one of your front facing and two of your back facing. There is no mention of interfacing your facing pieces. Now, depending on your fabric choice, you might want to consider interfacing your facing pieces for a little bit more stability. Now, because I'm using denim for my main fabric and I'm using this cotton sateen for my lining fabric, I am going to skip the interfacing on my version as the pattern instructions contemplate. If you're using a much lightweight fabric for your facing piece, then you definitely want to go ahead and interface your facing pieces. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the pattern instructions don't tell you to stay stitch your neckline pieces. Again, if you're using a very lightweight fabric for your facing pieces, you might want to go ahead and stay stitch around your neckline pieces. Now, for stay stitching, you want to start at your shoulder seam and work your way towards your center back, and then repeat it on the other side. And so far as the front piecing is concerned, you want to start at the shoulder, work your way to the center front, stop, flip your piece over, start at the opposite shoulder and work your way back in to your center front. You do not want to come down from one shoulder and then sew up towards the other shoulder. That is not how you do your stay stitching. It's from the outer corner, come right in to your center front pieces. Now, one other thing I want to mention is that even though this is a sew along tutorial, I'm not going to be following the pattern instructions word for word. For two reasons. One, because I like to construct my things in a way that makes sense to me, and that is what I'm going to be sharing with you here in today's tutorial. And the second thing is, because I'm using such heavyweight fabric, I'm not going to do the burrito method. The pattern instructions walk you through quite nicely how to do a burrito method if that is your chosen choice, but I am actually going to join my facing to my main pieces a little bit differently. So if you're curious to find out how I'm going to accomplish this without using the burrito method, then make sure to keep on watching. Alright, now we can start our sewing. So the first piece I'm actually going to work on is my back main pieces. So the instructions tell you to sew your center back seam using 3/8 of an inch, or you can serge it and press your pieces either open or to one side. Now, because I'm using such heavyweight denim, I'm actually going to finish off both sides of my center back seam first at my serger, and then I'm going to sew it using the 3/8 of an inch down the back and press my seams open. So let's go ahead now and do that. So we have sewn our first seam, and now I'm going to press my seam. Now, when you're pressing your seam, you should ideally press your seam just as you have sewn it first, and you just want to press your iron down on your seam. Now, because I am using denim, I can go back and forth, but it's good practice just to press your seam using the weight of the iron on your seam to set your stitches. Now, once you have pressed your seam flat like this, you then want to open up your seam. Now, to assist me in pressing my seam open, I've just grabbed my ham and my clapper, two essential tools, especially when working with heavyweight fabrics such as denim. Now, to use these tools, I'm just going to put my back piece over my ham, and then I'm going to finger press the seams open like so, and follow that up with my iron. Then with my clapper. And using the clapper when the material is hot is just going to help me to flatten my seams quite nicely. And I'm going to repeat the process right the way up my center back seam. Once I finish pressing my seam open from the inside of my back piece, I'm going to turn it so that the right side of the fabric is facing out, and I'm going to repeat the process. Now, depending on your fabric choice, you might want to go ahead and use a handkerchief or a piece of organza, I think it is called, just to protect your fabric from your sole plate of your iron. But because I'm using denim fabric, I'm not too bothered, and so I'm just going to press it as is. Repeat the same process with my ham. Now we have a nice flat center back seam. So now that this is complete, we can move on to working on our front pieces. I have grabbed my pocket piece and my side bottom piece for my front jumper. It's imperative that you go ahead and clip your notches because your notches are going to be super important for the next couple of steps. When we have completed our pocket, it's going to look like this from the right side of the fabric, and then this is the wrong side of the fabric. So let's go step by step to complete the pocket. Right sides together, you're going to pin the top of your pocket piece to the top of your side bottom piece. I'm just going to pin it from the denim side because my denim is sturdier than my facing piece, and if there is any easing in to do, then the machine is going to help me to ease in the lighter weight fabric at the bottom. So I'm going to sew it from the denim side facing up and my facing side facing my presser feet. So I'm just going to pin this into place. Once it's pinned, I'll repeat the process on the other side, take them to the machine and stitch using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I've already stitched my pocket to my main side bottom using the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now the pattern instructions don't tell you to do this, but I'm actually going to grade my seams. Grading your seams just helps to reduce bulk, and because I have chosen a heavyweight denim fabric, that is inherently quite bulky. And so wherever I have an opportunity to reduce some of that bulk, then I'm definitely going to take it. So I'm just rolling the denim out of the way and snipping down my lining fabric using my pinking shears, which, in case you're unfamiliar, are the shears with the serrated edge, like that. With the lining side reduced, I'm going to turn my piece over, and then I'm just going to slightly trim my denim piece. Now you want your denim piece or your main piece to be a little bit longer than your trimmed pocket piece. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, nobody's going to see it, but I would definitely recommend that you try grading your seams, especially if you're using thicker weight fabric. Alright, the next step, I'm going to take this to my ironing board and I'm going to press my seam allowances up towards my pocket. Now once your piece has been pressed, it will look like this. The instructions then tell you to turn your pocket piece inwards towards your main bottom piece. However, you guys, I'm not going to do it just yet. I'm actually going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to understitch the seam allowance behind here to my pocket bag. That is going to make it so much easier to turn your pocket inwards. Now, if I were to do it like this, it is going to take a little bit of finagling to get it to be nice and sharp at my pocket edge. And so just to make the process a little bit easier, I am going to understitch. Now, it might seem like an extra step, and it is, but it does help when it comes to turning your pocket. Trust me. The understitching has been done, and it is just a line of stitching about 1/8 of an inch away from your seam line right here. Now, can you see, guys, how much easier the pocket rolls towards the inside? And I haven't even pressed it into place as yet, but I don't have to play with it as much to get a nice, crisp, sharp edge for my pocket. So I'm going to take this to my ironing board now and press it into place. She has been pressed and she looks great. So I'm going to take this to my sewing machine now and I'm going to top stitch 1 inch away from this edge right here. Now for your top stitching, you want to increase your stitch length. I like to increase mine up to a 3.0 millimeter. And for this particular project, I'm going to be using the same thread that I used to construct my piece, but you could always opt to have a contrasting thread for your top stitching. Again, I am not going to do that on this version. So back to the machine I go to top stitch 1 inch away from this edge right here. With our pocket done, it's time for us to attach our side bottom piece with our pocket to our side top piece. To do that, we're going to align the seam line of our pocket with our triangular notch on our side front piece. I'm just going to pop a pin to hold it into place, and on the opposite side I'm going to pop a pin as well to hold them both into place at the triangular notches. I'm then going to flip up my side bottom piece to expose my pocket bag on the inside. I am then going to pin the pocket to the bottom of our side main piece. Then I'm going to take it to my machine, stitch it using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and finish off my raw edges with my serger. Once that is complete, this is what you should have. I can now turn my main pieces right side up, and I'm just going to pin the pocket piece to my side front piece, and then I'm going to take it to my machine and just baste my sides into place. Our side front piece is complete. We now have our pockets sewn together, and we can then now attach this piece to our center front piece. Now I have gone ahead off camera and attached one side to my center front piece, and this is what it should look like. So now I'm going to attach the opposite side. I'm going to start by pinning the bottom of my side piece to the bottom of my main center front piece. There is a triangular notch on your main piece that matches up with the triangular notch on your side piece, and that is right where the top of your pocket should be. So I'll pin it there, and at the very top of our side piece there is a little notch. This little notch lines up with the top part of your center front piece. Like so. So this is what it looks like from the opposite side. Your center front piece does not go all the way up to your shoulder seam. So I'm going to finish pinning this into place, and then I'll take it to my machine, stitch using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then finish off my seams, and then I'll be back. Our pieces have been attached and I finished off my edges. Now it's time to press my seam. Now in this case, I'm going to press my entire seam towards my center front so that I can top stitch from the main side of my fabric. Now if you were to press your seam towards your side front, then you will find that you will get some additional bulk because of the pockets. So you need to press your seam towards your center front. Once you have done that, take it to the machine, and then you're going to top stitch right along your seam line about 1/8 of an inch away from your seam. Remember, you're going to want to increase your stitch length when you're top stitching, and my preferred length is 3.0 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead now and do that. Alright my lovelies, so this is what my front piece now looks like now that we have joined our side top, our side bottom, inserted our pocket, and have joined both of those side panels to our center front piece. Now that this is complete, if you're following along with the instructions, you'll want to go ahead and attach your front piece to your back piece at your shoulder seams, and then go on to do the burrito method. Because I am not doing the burrito method, I am going to deviate from the pattern instructions at this point. If you want to do the burrito method, then I would recommend that you follow along with Tessa and Tammy's instructions in the tutorial. But if you want to perhaps try something a little bit different, especially if you're using bulkier fabric, then you might want to pay attention from this point forward. Alright, let's have some fun working on these facings. So grab your front bodice piece and your front facing piece, and we are going to sew our front facing piece to our front bodice piece, right sides together, but we're going to stop 3/8 of an inch away from your shoulder seam. I have pinned my facing into place, and I have drawn a line using my charcoal liner 3/8 of an inch away from my shoulder seam. I want to make sure I start and stop precisely on this marking right here. So I'm going to head now to my sewing machine and stitch right the way around my neckline using the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I have attached my facing to my main at the neckline, and now I need to go in and grade my seams. So the first thing that I want to do is to snip up towards my stitching line at the V-neck point right here. Once I've done that, then I can go in and grade down my facing seam allowances. So I'm just using my pinking shears again, just to remove some of my facing seam allowance. Now when I get towards my shoulder seam, I want to keep my seam allowance intact. And so once I get to right about here, I'm just going to snip diagonally so that I can maintain my seam allowance right here. I'm going to do the facing side, and then I'm going to grade down the main body side just a little bit. Remember, we want to stagger our seam allowances, so our main fabric should be a little bit longer than our facing seam allowance. Like so. I'm going to repeat this process on the other side, and then I'm going to press my seam allowances towards my facing like so, and then understitch the seam allowances to the facing piece. I have attached the facing to my neckline, I have understitched it and pressed it into place, and this is what our neckline should look like. I'm now going to flip the facing back so that it is right sides together, and do the same thing at my arm side, stitching right the way around the arm side, leaving 3/8 of an inch away from the top shoulder edge. Alright, so I have sewn my back arm side right sides together, and I graded my seam allowances, and I understitched the arm side as far up as I can go. Now, bear in mind, you will not be able to understitch the entire length of the arm side, but understitch as much as you can. Once you've done that, you're going to pull your facing so that the wrong sides of your facing is now touching the wrong side of your main, like so. And then we're going to repeat these steps on our back bodice. The only difference is that our back facing is in two pieces instead of one like our front facing. So the first thing we need to do is to sew our back facing at the center back, right sides together using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then we're going to repeat the same exact process that we did for our bodice front. Now I'm going to go ahead and do mine off camera because the steps are the same, and then I'll be back to show you how we're going to attach our front to our back pieces. Alright, so we have our back bodice piece completed with the facing installed, and our front bodice piece completed with the facing installed. So I'm just going to shift the back bodice piece out of the way, and I'm going to go back in and turn the front bodice piece so that the facings are wrong sides facing me. So I'm just going to go in and pull it out so that I'm looking at the wrong side of the facing. Now for the back bodice, I want my back bodice so that the right side of the facing is facing me. What I'm going to do, I'm going to push the back bodice up into the front bodice through the shoulders, and I'm going to pull it up like so. I'm going to line up my edges, and then the right side of the facing pieces will now be facing, and the right side of the bodice pieces will now be facing. Just lining them up at the side seam. And I'm now going to go ahead and stitch right across the top of my shoulder seam right here. Once I have stitched across it, I'm just going to use my pinking shears now and trim up the corners to get rid of some of that excess bulk. Now we can pull this right side out. And there we have it. We have joined our back to our front. So I need to go ahead and give this a good press with my iron. Alright guys, so our facing has been installed and this is what it looks like from the right side. Now granted, this is still not my favorite method. I still much prefer the burrito method because I find it gives a neater finish throughout the entire neckline and arm side of the garment. With this method, you tend to have just a little bit of bulk here at the shoulder seams. Now this is not going to bother me too much, especially because of the fabric choice that I'm using. But if I had done the burrito method, I would not have had these little bumps at the edge. Now I did try to trim down my seam allowances. I probably could have gone in and trimmed a little bit closer, but what's done is done. Now that we have completed our facing, we can go ahead and attach our side seams. To attach our side seams, we are going to turn the fabric so the right side of your bodice main is facing upwards, and we're going to flip our back piece so that the side seams are right side together. We are going to line up the underarm like so, and we are going to pin from the facing straight the way down to the hem and stitch using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright guys, so we're almost done with our jumper. Now I should mention that I went ahead and finished off my seams separately, and that is because I'm using this heavyweight denim. You can always sew your side seams together and then finish your side seams together and press your seams towards the back. But again, because I'm using such heavyweight fabric, I wanted to be able to press my seams open, and so I finished my edges first and then I sewed my side seams together. I also went ahead and finished off the raw edge of my facing, and I just used the same blue serger thread that is in my serger, and I also finished off the raw edge of my hem. Now the next step is to go on and press up our hem by 1 inch and top stitch it into place. Now to do my hem, I'm just going to grab my Nancy Zimmerman seam gauge and my charcoal liner pen. Both of these things you can find in my Amazon store, linked in the description box. And I'm going to slide the gauge until this green marker lines up with the 1 inch mark. I'm then going to line up that green marker with the edge of my hem, and I'm going to go in and mark in the 1 inch. And I'm going to repeat this right the way around the hem of my jumper, and then I'm going to take it to my iron and press up the inch seam allowance. Once that is done, I'll head to my machine and top stitch my hem into place. Alright my lovelies, so my hem has been top stitched into place at the inch seam allowance, and I also went ahead and added my label because I love having my own personalized labels in my garments. And you can notice that there are a couple of loose threads throughout my garment, so I'm going to go in and tidy up all of these loose threads. And the last thing that I would recommend you doing, and I am going to do it off camera, is I'm just going to tack my facing pieces to the side seam of my main jumper, just through the seam allowances. So I'm going to do a little bit of hand sewing. It's going to take me just a couple minutes to tack my facings into place. This is going to prevent your facing from flipping up at your arm side when you try to put your jumper on or something like that. And I find that to be very, very irritating, and so I do like to just hand stitch my facings into place at the side seams. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera, and then we can finally wear our jumper. Alright my loves, there you had it, a full sew along for the Pianoforte Jumper by Love Notions. I'm really hoping that you guys found this sew along very helpful, that you found it easy to follow, and that you could hear and understand everything that I was saying. Now if you enjoyed this video, be sure to go ahead and give your girl a thumbs up, and if you have any comments, any questions or anything of the sort, drop them down below in the comment section and I'll be sure to do my best to answer. As I mentioned already, the burrito method is my favorite way of finishing off all-in-one facings, but I thought it would be interesting to show you guys something a little different in today's tutorial, so let me know what you think of this alternative finishing. Now you guys, that is all I needed to share with you for today's video, so until next time, stay calm, stay cool, stay safe, and absolutely go pick up your pianoforte pattern. Peace.